Right before we went on air this morning, Kanye West popped in for a surprise meeting with our... I don't know what really else is there to say. I'm just going to leave it to you.
The nose says it all.
I think so.
I love how you started the show with no acknowledgement of the blinking nose, though. Just went delve right into the topic.
Is my nose blinking?
Blinking nose. Your shoes, too.
My shoes, yes.
They blink as well. I do love the ensemble. That's Kanye.
Well, you know...
Is it an inauguration performance? That's what it has to be. Or brand ambassador?
It has to be. I would think if he is going to perform at the inauguration, that could mean something. I mean, we know that Trump has had terrible outreach to the African-American community, and we know whether or not you love him or hate him.
This is going to help.
Well, that's the thing. Whether you love him or hate him, it could be a symbolic gesture. And I also think if you think about Kanye West, he was the person that after Hurricane Katrina said George Bush doesn't care about black people. And George Bush said that that was a real low point in his presidency. And so if you see that outreach with President-elect Trump and Kanye West, perhaps that's
maybe he'll be the secretary of selfies.
Everybody needs one of those. Also, outreach to young people. And people say that Republicans often ignore pop culture and they don't do outreach to young people. They don't do, all of the celebrities tend to side with folks on the left. And they say, well, maybe that's because Republicans don't do any outreach, don't make an effort to say, you know what, your voice at the table is welcome. We want to reach out to more people. We want to get our message out. So if that's why he's there, then I commend him for that, because Republicans don't do that ever. And he would be the first Republican that I would have seen in a long time to make that kind of effort.
The Democrats were guilty of that, and that's why we lost the election. That they didn't the Democrats.
That's to voters in Central America, but
Central America.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm Central.
Middle
the
America.
Central part of America. Central America, the center, the Midwest.
Dawn on Facebook wrote, Trump's probably going to tell Pence you're fired, then put Kanye in as VP. That is not a shocking statement. It isn't.
Not today.
No.
I mean, given what we've seen, anything
it could happen.
I'm telling you.
It's
That's why I have a red nose.
Yeah.
So, State Republican Majority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell just announced a bipartisan Senate probe into the Russian election interference and flat out said the Russians are not our friends. Now, Trump was very warm towards Russia during his campaign, and his new Secretary of State pick, Rex Tillerson, has major and personal relationships in Russia. So, what does this say? Are the Republicans saying, okay, we don't like this flag that we're seeing? This is a red flag.
But he knew this. Didn't he know this before the election? He knew that they were hacking before the election.
Yeah, it was reported for the first time in October.
So now, why is he coming out with it now, do you think?
Mitch McConnell?
Yeah.
Well, I think he wants to be on the right side of history, for one thing, which is that you have to defend the democratic process.
Well, but he was pretty neutral throughout the election.
He was.
If you remember, Mitch McConnell largely avoided discussing Donald Trump. He just avoided comment.
I think that's called hedging your bets, Sonny.
Well,
like if he won, they would get a job, and if he lost, they would be clean.
He did hedge his bets, but I think he also counseled a lot of the Republicans how to deal with Trump if he were elected or if he had not been elected. So
I also think that there's a point where people, we talked about the line in the sand.
Yeah.
This is his line in the sand.
Yeah.
You can't turn us over to Russia. And if there's an issue, and Trump has said, there's something wrong. It's crooked. It's this. So now we're seeing that there might have been some crooked stuff. So everybody should be very happy to find out that America is going to remain their own country and not be a puppet government for Russia.
Shouldn't Trump be interested in looking into it? Because he's the one who's worried about being rigged.
This is where his ego is undoing him, though. This is like a tragic flaw of his. Like, this is a moment where he said himself there were millions of people that voted. It doesn't change the results. Trump did. Going forward, it should be, this is never acceptable.
Yes.
Trump should be saying the Russian hacking. They need to be looking back at how this all started and saying, in the future, we're not talking changing the results. I'm just saying everyone should be putting their head down and saying, we got to fix this.
Because, the Russians have done this before. They've put in puppet governments. And, look, would she have been elected if all of the emails hadn't been hacked? We will never know. We'll never know. Right. Because there was a lot of rigging going on in lots of different places, I think. But the idea that we are suddenly this third world country that needs someone to come in and say, hey, you know, it's what we do to other countries. We go in and say, hey, you're not doing this. This is not the democratic process. And suddenly now it's us. And I'm glad Mitch McConnell is saying, you know what? This is my line in the sand.
Lindsey Graham and John McCain also.
And Lindsey Graham.
Are the
so
Republicans.
thank you guys. Thank you, Republicans,
But, you know,
because I appreciate
it.
You know?
But in order for this, you know, my fondest wish is that this election would be null and void. You know, everybody knows where I'm coming from. All right, I know a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people do not. That I should accept him as the president. What they need to do is find a smoking gun. They haven't found a smoking gun in the RNC's emails that would connect Russia directly to Trump.
Well, they're not going to find it in RNC emails. They're not going to find
wherever
it.
they need to, somebody needs to find that, and then they can say this election did not play correctly.
That would be treason.
That would be treason. Short of that, I don't think they can undo the election because they're saying that Russia might have hacked into it, but they're not saying that there was a direct connection between Trump and
because
Russia.
there's not enough time. They've just copped to it. Something they've known, as you said, since, you know, almost a year ago.
Right.
They knew.
You can't quantify the difference it had with those emails being released by WikiLeaks
we don't know.
But you know what? The night is young. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, that's why I say you have until the 20th. Anything can happen.
Hope springs eternal.
Yes. You know.
But for today, I think it's a coming together moment to look at. You know, we always say, well, Republicans care about, you know, certain things and Democrats care about certain things. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of people on both sides of the aisle that care about putting America first and are concerned about interrupting.
No,
there's plenty.
Who else is there?
Yeah, but I'm not even just talking about people in positions of leadership. I'm talking about American voters out there who are saying,
that's right.
We absolutely must protect the democratic process. Regardless of who wins an election, we cannot have a country like Russia, like Iran, like whatever, that's a political foe meddling in our system. And I think you're going to have an uprising of people that say, I don't care if my guy won. That's great.
Yeah, but
he has to have won.
Wait a second. If there was a nexus, they only care if it affected the election. I think a lot of voters are saying, why are you making much ado about nothing? Because the bottom line is he would have been elected anyway.
But the president-elect, if I may call him that.
President-elect.
The president-elect can barely get the words out. You know, he himself doesn't say, oh, gee, this is a terrible thing for the country.
Because he doesn't know his history.
He was asking in that tape we showed yesterday, saying, come on, Russia, hack into Hillary's emails. I mean, the president-elect himself.
That's true, but that's to imply that people on the right necessarily follow his lead, I think is false.
Yeah, but the fish stinks from the head, okay?
No, that's not, but that's not how it works.
I think Trump was the biggest divider in the Republican Party in a long time. So the whole talk of the Republican Party along the way was they weren't getting on board.
And they held their nose.
But they're on board.
A lot of people held their nose.
Well, you know, they're all lining up.
Come on.
But here's the thing. I do feel like, again, the line in the sand is they don't want this process, whether they liked Obama, hated Obama. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of them don't like about each other, but one thing that they are united about, I feel. Well, because why would, you know, Mitch McConnell, what is he says stuff and then you don't hear from him for 2 years. So he's saying out loud, I don't care who's elected. This is not okay. And that's the line in the sand. And I'm glad to see that there is one, because we've allowed a whole bunch of stuff that we wouldn't have taken from any other candidate. Ever. So I just, I feel like this is a message to President-elect Trump. It's a message to anybody who doesn't understand what the American system is, and that is we are not run by any other country. We are America. We may not like the people we elect, but we make that decision, nobody else. And if it turns out that Russia's fingerprints are all over this, I think there is a discussion that's going to be had.
Well, we would like Lindsey Graham and John McCain to come on the show. It would be very nice to have them here.
Well, come back, you know. Come back to the show.
Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
But he's never been here.
Mitch.
Has he been here, Mitch McConnell?
I don't think Mitch is Mitch.
I would love to hear from
Mitch. Come on, baby. Come on, Mitch. Look at me. Look at me. You see my red nose? Come on, Mitch. Come on, Mitch. And John McCain, come back.
I like Lindsey.
Lindsey Graham, we love you.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Coming up, retirement rage. The employee who dropped the mic by blasting his bosses on the way out the door.
Welcome back. Apparently, some adults who are sitting in the echo chamber up there feel that my nose is distracted.
I don't even notice your nose.
Most people don't notice my nose.
Thanks for calling Rudolph out once again.
Thanks.
The story wasn't enough.
So I'll just take it off and make you guys feel, but yes.
Oh, it's like the Grinch one.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I try to entertain. I try to be cute. And the adults are like, oh my God, you're so distracting.
No good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished. So you know how I feel? Look at my shoes. So there is a question I have to ask you because it has to do really with Donald Trump. Not so much, but what's happened to Mr. Romney? Does it seem, because folks around Mr. Trump are saying, yeah, we were messing with him. We did it to mess him up. So is this the?
Yeah.
What is this? Are any of us safe from this?
Roger, let me just say what it is. Roger Stone, one of his surrogates, longtime Trump advisor, said interviewing Romney for Secretary of State was just, quote, to toy with him, unquote, for daring to criticize Trump. So you can add to the list of the qualities that Trump has, sadism now, because he wants to get back at people and make them suffer and humiliate them.
I'd like to think that's
really
not true. I'd like to think that's not true. Only because I know Roger Stone, he's an advisor to Trump, and he did say he
said that.
He said
that's a quote.
Yeah.
But if you look at Rick Perry, who has now been announced as his choice for
Wait, but you got to deal with that.
But Rick Perry also criticized Trump. He said he was a cancer on conservatism.
But
he came out against
the man is not talking about anybody. He's talking about Romney. So,
Right,
and he's saying
Romney was merciless.
we did it to mess with him.
But there's, because Romney basically, I think, called him a con man and called him a phony and called him a fraud and criticized him. But Rick Perry,
not like the other people.
Rick Perry did the same thing.
I mean,
Rick Perry called him a barking
Kellyanne Conway.
The difference is that Rick Perry is to conservatives, he's an ally. Conservatives look at Mitt Romney as the establishment guy. They don't like him. So Donald Trump can get away with kind of abusing Mitt Romney.
I think he's jealous because Romney's better looking. I really do. Romney's
He's a good-looking guy.
He is very good looking.
I think he wants people to grovel.
But other people have criticized him.
He wants
like
them
Rick
to grovel.
Perry,
Look at Chris Christie.
Wait, one at a time.
Chris Christie was humiliated. And I think these people allow themselves to be put in that position. Now you see Carly Fiorina. Stop. If you criticized him and he criticized you and he called you ugly or whatever, stay away. There's no benefit that comes from allying yourself.
That's why this is so offensive. Because, a lot of people Kellyanne Conway, when she was representing Cruz, said some very unattractive things about him.
About Trump.
About Trump.
Yeah.
But he used her still as his campaign manager.
But this is the point. So why jug with somebody when you don't have to? Why be a...
Sadistic.
I'm telling you why, though, because
there are no words.
There are words
I hope they have their finger on the button up there.
Because his base, those hard right people can't stand Mitt Romney.
Okay, so why not just ignore Mitt Romney? Why bring him into the middle of it?
He's not wired like that because he wants to humiliate people.
We're assuming that Roger Stone is being honest.
He benefits. No, I'm sorry. For the longest time, there was a section of the right that can't stand establishment politicians on the right. They couldn't stand the Mitt Romney.
You mean all the establishment politicians who can't
right, so Mitch McConnell is the same way. Those kinds of politicians. There's a segment of people on the right that can't stand them. And Donald Trump knows that if he goes after Rick Perry, that's not going to go over well because conservatives like Rick Perry. But if he goes after Mitt Romney, they'll say, oh, good, he was an establishment hack.
Listen, I like
and he
Mitt
gets
Romney.
away with it.
It's getting to the point where I wish he was the president. Don't you wish Romney
but that might be why he's jealous.
He's jealous.
Likable.
Yes, I like Rick Romney.
I just think it just seems to me that there are people that have criticized Donald Trump and he's appointed them. There are people that have criticized Donald Trump and he hasn't. So I'm just not sure that I believe that he is that sadistic.
Listen.
This is
a quote from a guy that's in the... I mean, we listen to everything else they say. Why would you doubt this?
All of a sudden, this is fake news.
Only because, look, I try to look at motivation, and it just seems to me that if Rick Perry called him a barking carnival act, but that's his choice for a Department of Energy, and Mitt Romney called him a con man, and he decided not to go with them. I don't know.
It's not even that. If the man hadn't said it, we wouldn't be talking about it. Yeah. If the man hadn't said, we did this specifically to him because he was a bonehead to us. That's what he said, and that's why we're discussing it.
He did say that.
Yes. And so once he puts that out there, we say, wow.
That's
why? That's kind of crappy.
If it's true, it's horrible.
Well, the man said it now.
He said it.
Why are you shocked by it, though?
Well, I understand. I don't know why you're surprised either. But does it make sense to you from a political perspective that grassroots right can't stand the likes of us?
Psychology Today listed signs that you might be a perfectionist, like having trouble completing something because you're always trying to make it better. Let's speak to anybody at the
Yes, that's me. I have so many brilliant ideas in my drawer. if I ever finish them, I'd be like Albert Einstein.
I thought you said you had brilliant ideas in your drawers.
I have that. I do. That's what I meant. Right in my drawer. That's exactly what I was talking about.
It is. When I read this list for Hot Topics, so many of them spoke to me. It's kind of scared me. It's something that I've struggled with a long time. Like, one is you can't trust others to do a task correctly, so you rarely delegate. You have demanding standards.
Only you can do it.
Only I can do it.
I do that.
Only I can do it.
Okay.
You have demanding standards for yourself and others.
That's true of you.
And
I like that. I like that. That's true of you.
Yeah. It's
number 8 for you. You tend to fixate on something you messed up. Remember the Jeopardy?
You know I do. I'm still fixated over Jeopardy. It's like taking a bullet every time they show that damn show.
Projects, if you think you can't nail it or finish it, you just keep waiting, like you don't go near it.
Yeah. Make it better.
Well, in the delegating, I do that to Max all the time. He'll say, I'll do it. I was like, you're just not going to do it right. Never mind. Like, and then I go do it myself.
It's a terrible
See, I had this disease thanks to my dad. My dad has this. I call it a disease, honestly, because it drives you crazy. I had it thanks to my dad. I used to hate group projects when I was in school. I was always afraid someone was going to mess up. I used to fixate if I took a test and I got, 8 things right and 2 wrong. I'd come home and I was obsessed, and I fixed it because of my mom. My mom came to me one day and she saw a kid that was going to be tortured her whole life and said, you know what? Life is too short for this. You need to learn to make mistakes. You need to learn that none of this stuff you're worried about is a big deal.
And it worked.
You need to chill out. And she repeated it so many times. She said, I wanted you to be the kind of kid that could throw your hair back and say, you know what? Life is too short. And I finally learned it. It took me a long time. And I got to tell you, I'm so much happier.
Really?
So much happier.
I'm not there. I have to play the tapes in my head all the time. It's okay, let it go. It's okay, let it go. It's okay, let it go.
God, this table needs a lot of therapy.
Let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go.
A lot of shrinking at this table could be very useful.
What could be useful?
Shrinking. Therapy.
Whoopi's my therapist.
I've done it already. I've been there, done that.
I know you taught me real psychodynamic.
Yeah, psychodrama, yeah. I'll give you a psychodrama.
I don't need this. I'm cool.
She's fine.
See any of these that spoke to you?
She doesn't.
Because I see something I have to get done, I get it done. I get it done.
Yeah.
And if I do it the best I can and somebody can do it better, fine, come back and do it. But I've done what I'm supposed to do. And I don't have time to fool around and go, well, it maybe needs to have a little bit more.
You have a creative mind, though.
But my mind doesn't stop me from going forward.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I think people get fixated on stuff because they don't want to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, I don't want to deal with it right now, so I'm just going to do this until I'm ready to move on. And sometimes that's all it is.
I find that I have this one here. You have demanding standards for yourself. In stand-up,
and others.
and others not as much. For myself, in stand-up comedy, like if I have to do an hour show, it is incumbent upon me that I have to be funny for one entire hour. Like there can't be any lulls. They have to be laughing hysterically for 1 hour, or I refuse to do it.
How hard is that to do? Don't you have to dips and valleys?
It's been extremely stressful for 35 years.
Yeah.
It's very stressful. Because I watch some comedians and they have like gaps. They're walking around. People are relaxing, They can have a minute to look at their iPhone. Not me. If you are not laughing every single second, and that's why I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it as much because I have too much writing on it. It's ridiculous.
You should hang out with Jed's mom.
Hang out with Mom.
That's the only area, though. The rest of it, I don't have any anxiety about this show, for example. Oh, yes, of course. Do stand-up? Oh, yeah, very nice.
Stand-up is hard, I imagine.
puke. I puke.
Do you?
Sometimes. I used to.
What is the get nervous?
You do
Well, no, because
Sometimes
I don't have the same issues that Joy has.
Yeah, it's
because
different.
Joy is a stand-up. I'm not a stand-up.
You do stand up.
She does.
I'm not a stand-up. A stand-up has to do what Joy does.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I'm a storyteller.
I was going to say, because I went to see you and you were telling stories.
I want to be a storyteller now.
Well, you can. But you have to.
I don't have the patience. I can't.
But here's the thing about being a storyteller. What it does for me is if I see something and there's a hole, I can't get beyond the hole until I've fixed it.
Oh.
So the stories have to flow.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they have to flow. They can't be choppy.
Well, that's
So
the same
it's-
kind of thing in a way.
Well, in a way, but
the puking.
I do it differently because you know, most of my show's not written down. There are things that I like to talk about that I always know I'm going to do. So if the audience is like not in the groove with me, I go into the things I know is going to bring them in.
I say.
You know, it was
That's
shocking
it.
to me when I went to
What
see your
was
show.
The fact that I was funny?
No, I know you're funny. At the King Theater, I think in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
you allowed the audience to ask you questions.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
I
was
do
like,
that, too.
oh my gosh, what are they going to ask? That was, for me, like the most fun part of the show.
Wow, thanks.
Well, it was so much fun. But it was very insightful. It was just really interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know.
Well, I do a Q&A too.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I want to go see you in.
Yeah, she's really good. You just missed her. She was just.
I was just at the Sugar House. I'm going to be at Foxwoods January 7th.
Very
I'm
nice.
going to go to
So,
that.
try this again.
I'm going to go to that.
And then that's
We
it. I have to
should, okay, so we're going to tell you, audience, meet us at Foxwoods for Joy's show on the 7th.
We're gonna go.
You sell this show out.
coming?
We will all be there to root with you, okay? We'll see you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Sarah.
I got something, you guys. The holidays are a time to connect with people you love, and we're helping you do it for less this season.
Really?
Yes. Total Wireless offers unlimited talk and text plus 5 gigabytes of 4G LTE data on America's largest and most dependable network, all for just $35 a month. And we're making a connection with members of our audience right now because you're getting an LG X-Style smartphone and 1 month of Total Wireless airtime.
That's nice. I didn't understand it until she got to the
That's a good one.
Well,
she
golly.
But until she got to the word phone, I didn't know what she was talking about.
She's making it rain with her cards. You know, a Texas public school teacher was forced to remove a display, Christmas display of Linus from, you know, Peanuts, the Peanuts
I love that.
cartoon. You know, the Peanuts Christmas cartoon.
Special, yeah.
Along with the quote, "For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord." That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. Now that's direct from the cartoon. And they made him take it down.
With places, they don't like that. So that's a, yeah.
But why do people have to get offended by everything? Like, I'm not religious, but if I see something, why does it have to offend you? Why can't you just say, I mean, I was raised Catholic for years. If I see a menorah, I say, oh, that's great. Someone's expressing themselves and what they love and what they're passionate about. If an atheist is entitled to not believe in anything, it doesn't offend me, though. And I think there's something wrong culturally if we jump to be offended by everything.
Well, I also think there are 2 ways to screen anything when it comes to religion. Are you making people do something with the religion, like a mandatory prayer? That would be a problem.
Yeah.
Or if you're saying that someone else that practices and approaches the school and says, can we make a door for this holiday? And you say no. Those should be the screening for it, because you're not making anyone do anything with the Charlie Brown display, and you're not saying you can't have your own door if you're Jewish or...
And let's keep in mind, it is Christmas. It is Christmas. Okay? And just keep this in mind as well.
It's also
I was just let me do my thing.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Hanukkah and Christmas this year fall on the same day.
Exactly. That's right.
It doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
But it does happen. And you know what? Christmas has come the same time every year for a very long time, particularly in this country. Now, what people get crazy about is nobody's trying to get rid of Christmas. You can't. Christmas is what it is. This is when it happens. It's always going to. Christmas trees are always going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to put menorahs up, too, because, around the same time, the celebrations are the same. And you know, Kwanzaa happens at the same time. And you know what? Kwanzaa, we need to get our Kwanzaa stuff together. We need more Kwanzaa songs so people can sing Kwanzaa.
But I think that's the issue that this school confronted, because the law in that state says a display relating to a traditional winter celebration may not include a message that encourages adherence to a particular religious belief. So perhaps
then it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. No. But they don't all fall at the same time. Christmas falls at this time. This is when you do it. If Hanukkah and Christmas are a weekend within, then you put them together. But you cannot pretend that Christmas doesn't start with the birth of Christ. Listen, I'm not, listen, don't, wait, don't do it, because I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to disappoint you. I'm not a religious person, okay? I'm not a religious person, but I do know that Christmas starts with the word Christ. It's about the birth of Christ. So you can't erase that.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in it, then you got Santa Claus. Santa Claus is not a religious thing. He's a big old guy with a nose and stuff.
Hanukkah isn't even equal to Christmas. Their high holidays are Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. So a lot of people that are Jewish will say, you guys put so much emphasis on Hanukkah, but Christmas is your high holiday and Easter is your
Except that Hanukkah, when it comes to gifts, 8 days of presents.
It's very
I'm not going to lie.
Very nice.
So it's a whole thing.
You know, let me just say one thing there, because I'm a very big Christmas fan.
Yes.
I love Christmas so much.
Yeah.
And I still say separation of church and state must be adhered to. In a public
That's
school.
not what that means, though. That separation of church and state means preventing the establishment of a national religion, not preventing people from expressing their beliefs about religion.
I agree with you, Joy, because the law in this state says you can't really have this adherence to a particular religion.
But you're not forcing other people to adhere.
But it's the same conversation. But it's the same conversation with a woman's right to choose. What I do with my body is my right. It is not your right to tell me. The same thing is if you believe in Christmas, it's not my right. I grew up and you know, kids who didn't go to Catholic school had Christmas, and we never knew what their religions were, but we hung because it was Christmas holiday. Yes, I know we have to go, but they wouldn't shut up. We'll be right back. One of the funniest women we know is also our friend, funny woman Allie Wentworth. She's at her best in her new series, Nightcap, as a talent booker trying to survive life behind the scenes of a late-night talk show. Please welcome the very funny and fabulous Allie Wentworth.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, baby.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Look
good.
At me. Look at me putting it to the man by wearing my Rudolph.
That's right.
Yeah.
On this show especially.
Yeah.
So, baby, you know, some are saying we're in a dark political time. You grew up in Washington, D.C. during lots of crazy other crazy times.
Yes.
And it had a
tell you about it?
Yeah, please
do. All right, well, let me take off my nose since we're starting there. I grew up, my parents were all political journalists during Watergate. So Woodward and Bernstein are like, you know, my godfathers. And during Watergate, I was in school with G. Gordon Liddy's son and everybody, and I just remember as a child, it was so intense at home. There was fighting. People were scared. Am I on some list? And you know, I had to break up with G. Gordon Liddy's son, who I thought was so cute.
Really?
You know, his dad was a criminal. Like, what am I? You know? So I just remember it was such a dark time that that's when I started performing. I had to find levity. And I would sort of stand on the kitchen counter and do impressions and joke around because my parents were so upset all the time. The sad thing is that I'm a 50-year-old woman and I still do it. My children are scared of ISIS, and so I get on the table and I do some stuff from your show.
Oh, thank you. I like that.
Around the world.
Do it, girl.
So is this period more scary or less scary than Watergate right now?
Well, it's more scary for me because as a kid, they broke in and they broke into the hotel and got a few files. Now it's scary just because the world is so unpredictable and so different.
Right.
And
it's much worse now.
Yeah, and I have an 11-year-old daughter who doesn't really understand what ISIS is, but she knows that she's scared, and she's now sleeping in bed with us every night.
Yeah.
So what do you do, Allie? What do you do? You got little girls. You see what's happening. What can you say to other parents who are at their wits' end with their children, who are scared, and they're also scared as adults?
This is what I say. I say two things. I say to my kids, one is, we help out everybody in this country that is really going to need our help. Whatever in organization, we give, we volunteer, we help out. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I wasn't planning on story, which might be the end of my marriage. But we were watching the election. She says no. Well, then George Stephanopoulos will be free, honey. There you go.
I'm sorry.
Happy holidays.
I want to talk about your new show because I saw it last night, and it's just so fantastic.
Tell me later.
I'll tell you later. It just involves my 14-year-old getting upset about the election and screaming no abortions really loudly.
I have a 14-year-old upset
and I was like, you haven't kissed a boy yet. Don't use that word so flippantly. But she meant women's rights.
Right.
Well, I want to talk about your new show. I saw it last night. It's so fantastic. It's so funny.
Thank you.
And you executive produce it.
Yes.
You write it.
Yep.
You star in it.
I created it.
You created it. It's called Nightcap.
George Stephanopoulos.
I gotta say, that in a world of like ageism and everything in America, especially in Hollywood, that's the thing I feel strongest and most happiest about.
And you did it because it's going to be renewed for a second season.
It already was, girlfriend.
We have a clip. It's been renewed. We have a clip from tomorrow night.
Funny.
Always gets funnier.
Allie, you have some amazing guest stars in each episode. Whoopi is in there. Amazing. Parker. Now, things got a little hot and heavy with Sarah Jessica. You want to tell us about that?
Well, yes. No, we had a makeouts. Yes. So Sarah Jessica was on the show. We had a funny storyline where we went to theater camp together and we had a kiss, and I've never forgotten it. And of course she has. And then at the end she goes, of course I remember. And she kisses me. And can I tell you, to this day, I've only kissed my husband in 15 years. Right. I feel like Sarah and I are like a thing. We're together. So I saw her at a bar mitzvah recently, and she was like, hi, hey, how you doing? I was like, fine.
You know what?
Poor George. Well, poor George in general. Let's just
and the reason we keep bringing George up, because of course you know she's married to George Stephanopoulos. So will you come often? Will you come back some more?
I am going to come back. That's supposed to be a 45-minute segment. I just I've never talked so fast in my life.
That's the way it goes.
We love you. Come as often as you want. Thank Congratulations on the second season. Nightcap airs Wednesday nights on Pop TV. Check out your local listings. And when I tell you the bitch is funny, she's funny.
The bitch is funny.
Fast because we don't have any time to say goodbye.